My name's Jeff Bajorek, and my career in sales has been a hell of a ride. And I want to bring you along with me. If you prefer to sell things at a premium, if you never want to win a deal on price, rethink the way you sell. Welcome back to the show. My name's Jeff Bajorek, and I'm here to help you rethink the way you sell. Going back into the archives again here, another solo episode. I sat down for a few minutes behind this microphone and talked about the difference between knowing and executing. Again, it's a theme that runs through this season, and I hope you've picked up on that by now. What are the things that you can do to stop worrying about how much you know or how much you need to learn, and instead focusing on what you already know and you just need to execute on a little more efficiently, a little more effectively? Take a listen to this, and I'll talk to you again on the good side. Leaders are more than readers. Leaders are doers. You know, I've had a couple of people reach out to me. Hey, we've got a book club. What should we read this time around? I respond with, well, what do you want to learn? Well, we just need to get a book in our hands. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Mike said it really well. Instead of picking up another book, over the next quarter, why don't you go back and revisit a couple of main ideas from some of the books you've already read and actually implement them? I'm over the people who read 100 books a year. Good for you. I'm not mad at it. If you're treating books like podcasts, then, good. You take one thing away and then you move on. That's great. To me, I think it becomes an exercise in vanity sometimes, more often than not. And there are a few people out there. There are a few people out there who read a lot that I really, really respect. And it's a completely different thing, too, to say, if you're reading fiction, right? Like if you don't watch TV, you read books, right? Or if that's just how you spend your free time and your passive kind of recovery time, then, great. Read a book a day. Like I'm good with that. My kids are voracious readers. I really, really do like that. But if you're reading sales books and personal development books and all these things, and you're trying to get through all these books like it's an assignment because you feel like you have all this information you need to catch up on and learn, dude, you're missing the point. I was on a podcast, recorded a podcast today, and they asked me how I self-educate. Do I listen to podcasts? Do I read books? Do I, and I do. But I'm over the sales books for the most part, because you don't have to read too many sales books before you realize that they're all rooted in the same common behaviors, principles, fundamentals. And that's the point. And look, it's boring to read the same book over and over and over again. I get it, but instead of moving from one prospecting book to the next, looking for the right combination of words, phrases, cadences to be most effective, why don't you stop and think about what all of these books are rooted in, find that common denominator, and then work on that stuff. Like that's the point. That's what you should be doing. That's one of the reasons that these podcast episodes on this show are short. I'm going to make a point. I'm going to get out of your way. There's so much content out there. Content is not what we're missing. Execution is what we're missing. But we've been told leaders are readers. Okay. Well, let me read. That's like saying that the best prospectors make the most calls. Okay. Let me make more calls. Oh, yeah, but there's something missing there. Like if you're not actually executing, if you're not making good calls, if you're not reaching the people that need to be reached, if you're, it's more than just a function of math. In general, should you expose yourself to new concepts and new ideas? Yes. Should you subject yourself to content, whether you watch it, listen to it, view it, whatever, that makes you think? Yes. You know what is more and more important, and I'm learning personally is more and more important? Giving yourself the space to internalize, giving yourself the space to journal, giving yourself the space to actually distill those lessons into things that you can do something with, that's more valuable. Execution is where the rubber hits the road. That's what makes things happen. All the good ideas in the world are useless unless you're willing to act on them. And if you are subjecting yourself to so many good ideas that you don't know which ones to act on, if you think about it this way, every new great idea that you have creates just a little bit of conflict and a little bit of friction in your ability to get to work, right? Just the paradox of choice, the extra considerations, the things like that. So when you have a good idea, get to work. That's what's really important. And then if you are for some purpose, for some egoic purpose of, but I have a challenge with my friend, colleagues, whatever, about how many books we can read this year, and so I have to win. Well, okay, now you're reading for all the wrong reasons. You're not even thinking about the lessons. Don't just go through the motions. Do something with it. So the people who actually get things done, the people who actually execute, they're acting on what they learn, not just looking for more things to listen, and certainly not doing it for some kind of vanity reason. So, this is what I want you to do. Before you pick up that next book, I want you to think about the last book you read. And I want you to write down 3 main takeaways from that book. If you didn't take away 3, it may not have been that great of a book, but maybe it's just one common theme that you came through. And I read a book, or listened to a book recently about memetics, and the biggest takeaway from that book is called Wanting, by the way. Get caught up in the zeitgeist of what everybody else is doing unless you have a firmly rooted why, or you are firmly rooted in your principles and what you're trying to accomplish. That is the best defense for avoiding getting carried away. So that's one main takeaway. If you can narrow it down to less than 3 takeaways from that book, and then just sit for 15 minutes and think about how you're going to put that stuff into action. And then maybe work on putting that stuff into action over the next week before you pick up the next book. Okay? You'll start to see real impacts. You'll start to see real results. You won't just feel like you got to get caught up in your queue of books, right? I mean, I've got a dozen books that I want to read or listen to. But, making the time and making the space to actually utilize them, that's what it's really worth. And I'll never read all the books. I'll never read all the books worth reading. Neither will you. So what are you really trying to do here? What's the purpose? Okay. And the top performers, the people who make a difference, they act on what they learn. They don't just look to keep learning, which is really interesting. They do always look to keep learning because they're curious, but it's not a function of, hey, look how much I'm learning, right? I think you know what I'm talking about. So that's my challenge to you. And, that's my challenge to you. That's all I got for you today. A little shorter episode than most, but I think that helps underscore the point. Thanks for spending the last 10 minutes or so with me. You hear me say this all the time. You got a lot of choices. You're choosing not only to spend 10 minutes like this with me a couple times a week, but you actually pay for that privilege, and I appreciate that. I do believe that this is my best work. You get a stream of consciousness from inside my brain about something I've been thinking about, working on, and I hope you're actually doing something with it to make it work for you. I'll talk to you again soon. On the good side, I had to laugh after I recorded that. You can tell every once in a while that I listened to a lot of FM radio when I was growing up. But what did you think about that? What did you think about that piece? What do you think about your own ability or your own habits and disciplines of executing? It's really easy to call upon the plausible deniability of, well, I'm reading another book. Oh, I got this list I got to get through. Now all of a sudden, this work, this intellectual property, these ideas that have been thoroughly vetted and arduously placed in front of you, now you're just getting through them. What about all the ideas that go without implementation? Are you really better for knowing, or are you better for doing? So, go to your favorite books. Distill the top 3 lessons from each of those favorite books. Just pick 5, right? And then you got 3 lessons from each of those books. Combine them in one list. There are going to be some overlap. And then pick 3 things and execute. And do that execution part before you even pick up another book. Don't let shiny object syndrome get in your way. So many people are so insecure about what they already know that they forget that they already know more than enough to be successful. Something gets in the way. And a lot of what gets in the way is the space between your ears. We are not lacking content. We are lacking execution. Remember that. Remember that as you scroll. Remember that as you look for another title on your ebook reader or your audiobook player. You know what you need to know. You need to do more. That's what leaders and top performers do. Thanks again for your time today. Thank you so much for your attention. You have a ton of choices out there in the podcast world, and I'm humbled and grateful that you spent the last few with me. We've got a couple more episodes in this season. We are going to finish with a flourish for sure. I hope you're willing to stay with me. I hope you're willing to tell a friend, and we'll be back really soon.
Rethink the Way You Sell is a Pod About It production. It's mixed and edited by Doug Branson, with music by Blue Dot Sessions and Doug Branson. This podcast is masterminded by Jeff Bajorek.